we can.
Pictures and vision, I hope.
Done. Checking here.
Let's go.
Almost,
If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll figure it out later. G'day everyone. Welcome to, what day is it? Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? Tuesday.
Yeah,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Whisky chat with icon of whisky, Thalita Alves from the BenRiach distillery. We're trying something a little bit new tonight. I haven't actually done this setup before, but I thought, given the beautiful wall, good warehouse space, could be a good thing. Bit of a barrel here as well. Do you like my barrel?
Absolutely looks good. It makes sense.
It does make
Whiskey
sense.
barrels.
It's a wine barrel, but yeah, don't let that fool you. We can say it's a whiskey barrel. We use a lot of wine barrels in whiskey.
Which somehow it's also whiskey barrel, right?
Yes.
It can be in the future.
All a wine barrel is just a young whiskey barrel. It just hasn't grown up yet.
It makes sense with BenRiach, right? A lot of cask finishings. We're talking here about wine barrel. I think we're on theme.
Yeah, bloody oath. Yeah, I agree. This is definitely a good idea. Yeah, g'day everyone to tuning in. I think we're live on the Facebook and the YouTube. I can see that all working there, which is a lot of fun. But Thalita, it's been, 2 weeks?
Yeah,
since
2
we
weeks
spoke
now.
about Glenjonak. We're now going to talk about BenRiach. How's your last 2 weeks been? A lot's happened in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it all really good. We were meant to be here last week, but well, I took a week off and went to the Blue Mountains. By the way, if you get the chance, check out Blue Mountains. You're already able to book some phenomenal accommodations out there, good restaurants, good bars. Plus, of course, we're supporting their local economy. As you know, not only COVID, Blue Mountains definitely has suffered a lot with the fires throughout November until February this year. So I think it's worthwhile. Even my shopping, I did even all my shopping there, whatever. About butter in the Blue Mountains.
Yeah.
Because I think it's nice to really bringing a bit of cash to that side of the world. That's what I was doing. Middle of nowhere, beautiful birds, no cars, nobody. It was great.
Yeah. And a quick shout out to Phil Brooks who's jumping on the stream there. But I think that's something that we should remember, and it feels like another life ago. But when we were at the Aussie Spirits auction, which I know we were both at.
Yeah.
That was like a line in the sand. We're out of the woods. We can rebuild this. This year is now officially starts. Let's get out. Let's support the local communities. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later? It's like, bow. Nope.
Absolutely. We went from fires to then COVID to then, so there's always something. I think it's definitely important for us to be safely out and about, and that's what I'm trying to do. If you can, please do the same. I know that we're here to talk about whiskey, but I definitely think it's a good opportunity for us to remind us all that, we're here to help and support each other.
Yeah, it's been a tough time, and I was actually just writing up before you arrived today some announcements that we're going to make about some questions that we've been asked in the last couple of weeks about certain events that normally happen between now and the end of the year, and there's some good news and some not so good news that comes with that. But I think the bottom line is, whatever doesn't happen, we've had it still pretty easy compared to some people that are very tough out there. So I think it's important not to forget that, even though it does seem like an absolute lifetime ago, that we need to get out and support these local communities when it's safe and responsible to do so.
100%. And I think you just mentioned before, today we're here to talk about BenRiach, and I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that, of course, Glendronach is very close to my heart. BenRiach is definitely not far off. It's a brilliant distillery, so it's quite easy to be here talking about BenRiach today. It doesn't feel like work at all. Actually, this is definitely leisure, right? Like drink a little bit of whiskey, talk about BenRiach. I think that sounds like a great Tuesday night to me.
Yeah, and actually we've done these tastings in a few different positions. I quite like the up the front where you can sort of see the cars going on the street, in the vault where you're sort of like surrounded by all the expensive wines. This one, it's quite quiet out the back here now that we're the only ones left in the store. It's a warehouse essentially.
Party
warehouse party. But you sort of feel like removed from everything because you can't see the front street, you can't hear anything going on. So like talking about bubbles in the middle of global pandemics, I'm going to call this is one of the great bubbles of the global pandemics.
I was like, where is it going with this chat?
Yeah,
there you go.
Like
Bubble.
This could be any day of any year of any month right now. Like you can't tell anything that's going on.
All right, so Yes, great bubble for us over here with great whiskey. What is it that we're drinking?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I thought I'd crack open the BenRiach 10. I've obviously had a fair go of it in the last week leading up to it to get over it. But I mean, I've got a lot of love for BenRiach, and we've run a lot of tastings out in the tasting room opposite us here, where we've spoken a lot about my love for it. And we can talk about that sort of weirdness and the lack of perception and all that sort of thing that comes with the distillery. But I think it all has to start with a pretty good whiskey. And that's what, the BenRiach 10 is. It's just such a great, bang for buck, $80, $90 sort of whiskey that showcases a lot of things that we don't always see, we don't always sort of like look for in entry-level whiskies. I think in Australia, our market, we're looking for big, bold flavours, whether that's sherry casks or peat smoke or that sort of thing. This is just it's got bold flavours, but it's in a different way. It's vanilla, it's caramel.
It's a bold Speyside, isn't
Yeah.
it? Which is quite different. I think that is exactly what actually enchants me when it comes to BenRiach. I think MasterChef is on right now. By the way, I hope you're not watching MasterChef. I hope you're here with us. And they have been talking a lot about layers of flavors, and I really like when they talk about that. Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, this whiskey has this many flavor notes, and it's not just about the amount of flavor notes, but it's the way you layer them, it's the way they will behave in your palate. It's what comes first, second, and next, and the way they will affect each other. And if there is something that really the BenRiach is all about, is layering flavors from our, of course, 4-water famous sweet mash to the way we go about distillation, but of course our maturation, our cask finishing, and we always talk about this, right? The BenRiach, the distillery that open and close, that belong to so many people, and of course each person brings in a new concept, a new idea, therefore new barrels, therefore new experimentation. So imagine you now with these amazing warehouses with all of these barrels to play with, right? So layering flavor is very important for BenRiach. When you're bringing all of these different barrels, a minimum 3 barrels really when we're talking about our base expressions, 10, 12 years old, up to 4 barrels, even more in a field of expressions when we're talking about our 21s. So layering flavor, experimentation, this progressive way to bringing in Speyside whiskey, I think that really defines BenRiach.
We've got Master Chef. Why don't we have Whiskey Chef?
I think so too,
There-
right?
I mean,
That's an idea
it takes so long to make, but maybe like if you did a reality TV show based off all these barrels are here,
Master
and like
blenders,
blending championships, and then like all the young 21-year-old blenders could come in and try and win an internship at BenRiach or something like that.
Well, there you go, Rachel Bear, just an idea.
Someone quickly register that before we go too much further. I'd watch that. I don't watch a lot of reality TV.
That would be a fun one.
I'd watch that. I'd also be in the audience for that one because I think that would make me thirsty to watch. It
would be. I think we would try to enter as well.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty average at that sort of stuff.
But that's the whole point. You're meant to be amateur. You can't be a professional.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of fun. It would be a lot of fun. Someone, Fremantle Media, or someone who runs all those reality TV shows, go and franchise that right now before I do. It's interesting. You touched on a couple of things there, and there's a couple of questions coming through here that that I'll answer in a little bit, or ask you so you can answer them because I don't know the answer. But we touched on it there in terms of like the layers and the different warehousing, and walking into a BenRiach warehouse is like walking into a whiskey Willy Wonka factory with everything, all the different things that are going on there. Drawing that back a little bit, what is it about the production methods and the fermentation and that sort of stuff that you sort of alluded to there that makes BenRiach such a versatile and flexible spirit that it works with such a plethora of different casks?
That's a very good question. I think it's important to remember that different ways of going about production, of course, will result in a new make. They will behave in different ways, of course, in different barrels. BenRiach needs to be, as you said, very versatile. We have so many barrels. We have so many experiments going on at the distillery. So starting with our, of course, fermentation, this 4-water process, of course, extracting all those sugars, a very long fermentation process. But what I think is really interesting about BenRiach is that distillation moment and that very broad cut. I think you probably heard about it. We're quite famous for that. We have very early and very late cuts, therefore a very broad heart, which allows us to work with more barrels, because of course all that molecular weight, different moments of your distillation process will give you different molecules, therefore different barrels. So this very broad cut definitely helps us a lot.
Yeah. Do you maybe want to explain for people who maybe don't know what that heads, hearts, tails things is, in terms of that second distillation and what a broad or I'd say big heart. I think it's a big broad heart. It's a big-hearted spirit.
BenRiach has a big heart. I love that.
Okay, trademark that as well. Yeah, trademark that one as well. But if you want to explain, like, because there's some distilleries that have very small hearts. There's nothing wrong with having a small heart, but
absolutely not.
But what is it like? What do you mean by the cuts?
All right, so of course, as you know, we're trying to concentrate alcohol over here. You have your fermentation process. You're going to be left with liquid around 7-8% ABV. But we're looking, of course, into making whiskey, so we need to concentrate alcohol, leave water behind. And that's why, of course, all the distillation happens. So when it comes to single malt Scotch whiskey, we're talking about copper pot stills. We will distill that spirit once, we're going to concentrate alcohol, and then we're going to distill it twice, and we're going to concentrate alcohol once again, and we'll be left with a final ABV of, it depends distillery to distillery, but let's guess 65, 70, right? So it's relative. Each distillery will do its own way. Now, for your hearts, that first cut, so you start running, of course, your second distillation, that first moment, the first portion of new make spirit, we're going to leave behind. We're going to re-distill this later, and we're going to cut when the spirit is actually optimum for that first cut. So you start running. It works.
It is working. I was just double checking we were still live, but I thought the volume was off, so that's my fault. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Anyway, it's optimum to be, of course, aged. We're going to run this for an amount of time, and then we're going to cut that a second time, because this first portion and this last portion, they don't have flavors that we actually desire in the final product. That's the reason for us to actually have these cuts.
Unless you like wet dog and burning rubber tire.
Oh, yum, burned rubber. Yeah, that's my favorite flavor in whiskey.
There is sometimes, I have seen some distilleries, and there's one particularly in Australia that has like, it's like riding a bike behind a bus, just diesel fumes from quite late cuts, and it works for them. It works for them.
If it's on purpose, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, okay.
And I think if it's on purpose, I think I think everything is fine as long as you have a purpose. There are a lot of whiskeys that I really enjoy, and I'm not going to mention names, but they are on purpose, unbalanced. They bring this full-on unbalance to deliver something that only they can. And that's beautiful. And to be fair, even sometimes our Glendronach, as balanced and rounded as is, sometimes it just punched with sherry. I feel of the expressions. That's on purpose. That's not an accident. It's not something that just happened. They worked really hard to deliver that sherry bomb, and I can accept that.
Yeah.
Is when you have a purpose to bring even that rubber notes. BenRiach even is quite having this broad, of course, cuts. It kind of cuts into this funkiness at the start and at the end, and it brings in some very intriguing notes. So it's not necessarily all smooth, easy space side. It has that bold side to it. Yeah, it's meant to be space side and floral and fruity, but has that intriguing finishing, that it has intriguing notes to it, right? I think that's the whole.
And that's something that I've always found about a 10-year-old, and through all its iterations in the past sort of 5 years or whatever it's been, is that you do get that like cracked pepper sort of spice at the back of my palate. Is what I get, and it's something that you don't always expect. You know, okay, I've figured this whiskey out, I've nosed it, it's on a palate, and then just okay, that's gonna be a little bit different, which is what I like about it. And I guess that point of having that big heart is you're taking those high volatiles and those lower volatiles, and it gives you the ability to play with them later down the track, whether that's in 5 years, 10 years, or 40 years, as opposed to, you're never really going to find a delicate Glendronach because it's built to have those, as we spoke about 2 weeks ago, it's built to fight against really dominating casks.
And it has a distillation process it's quite different, because then for Glendronach, for example, we tend to have really late cuts. We tend to use that second portion of our hearts, which will behave quite well in sherry. Right? So we need this heavy, oily side of our new make spirit. So having a late cut is not a bad thing. That's the whole point. That's pretty much what you said. It works quite well. While Glenglassaugh will be, again, completely different. We work with a whole different portion of it again, which is cool, because sometimes when we think about the master distiller, we believe he's just it's all just about the ABV and that's it. We don't think that the temperature, that how quick or how slow you run that distillation. Of course, the still shape and the reflux and all this stuff we always think about, but it really makes a big difference. It really makes a difference around that, where you said the more or less volatile, the heavier or the lighter molecules, that all of this will affect flavor.
Yeah. I guess, and that's what makes whiskey so special for me, is there's all these 1%ers.
There's something so little.
So, that's, you could forget about it and it would not make sense. And, every little part of it plays a role. Quick question from the audience from Whisky is My Jam. We've jumped straight into the BenRiach 10-year-old, which is our go-to, and it's our entry point here at the Oak Barrel. But there is one below this in terms of price point, which is the Heart of Speyside. Speaking of big hearts, do you have a rough idea of what the specs are in the Heart of Speyside? I haven't tried it for a little while now.
I cannot give you this exact specs. Of course, I won't have specific recipes over here. And you know what? I haven't tried a lot of it myself, because we'll see some changes coming up.
Yep.
So I don't know if you have a bottle of that Heart of Speyside.
Is that still available, or is that?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if you still be able to get over here. So I don't want to.
Yeah, okay.
I won't say much about it today, because I cannot confirm that information. But I understand that at this stage you will not be able to really get it. So if you have some, enjoy it. It's just like that little bit of BenRiach 16 or that 17PX. I think the fact that we have such a versatile spirit and all this experimentation happening, right? Our famous Warehouse 13, our oldest warehouse from the 1898, where the magic happens, also means that we bring some beautiful expressions to life, but they not necessarily will stay with us forever. I think Rachel is doing a phenomenal job when it comes to bringing expressions that are here to stay.
Yeah.
Right, so now I think she's bringing some very, she's a great blender, she's a great distiller, and she's also great in admining our barrels. And that's what we spoke about this one. We're discussing Glendronach as well, right? It's not just about understanding how to make whiskey, it's understanding how to making whiskey today and in the years to come. And right,
speaking my language,
administration, spreadsheets, numbers, volumes, and I think this is happening now. And so I believe that whatever we see coming to life soon, and we will see some changes actually fairly soon. I think these changes are here to stay. We'll see some new expressions. I don't even know if I should be saying this.
Yeah,
anyway,
but we've already started seeing that, because my sense of time is now warped. But we did do a BenRiach tasting with Stuart Buchanan earlier this year.
We did.
And it was this year.
The last time we actually, by the way, Stuart Buchanan was here last week of March. So we ran a number of events, and on his last event, he actually got a message from Scotland, where everybody was quite worried. It was the 20th, I think.
No, because we did the tasting here on the 12th, because it was Friday the 13th that we had the boys from Adelphi the next night, and that was like when the COVID hit.
Exactly. He traveled back just on time. Just on time. Maybe he wouldn't have. Maybe he would still be here with us.
They're still the last two tastings that we've done in that room. Because everything after that weekend was
everything canceled. We had to cancel all of his events as well. So it was the start of all of that. It was an interesting week.
I won't forget that week anytime soon. But on the taste, so we did single casks at that tasting. The tasting before that, we did a lot of like the new like Authenticus and that sort of thing that we're coming to. So we've already started to see that new range of BenRiach, that slightly rejigged labelling and that new bottling, and that's kind of what excites me about BenRiach is sustainability for the future. I'm in a very privileged position. I get to drink a lot of whiskey. I've spent my last decade drinking a lot of very good...
You got to see the whole evolution of the brand.
And trying whiskey that I will never try again because they don't exist. So I totally understand people who are coming in now and say, I wish I tried that. And that's, I'm lucky enough to be in a position to be able to say more often than not, well, I did try that. So what excites me is where are we going next? What in the oak barrel and, you know, all the whiskey bars in town and just, you know, Scott Fitzsimons personally, what is going to be a whiskey that I'm going to really love and enjoy in the next, you know, 5 years' time, in 10 years? It's going to be like a new great staple for me. Like one of the whiskies that we celebrated in February this year was the cask strength batch 2, which I love, but that's batch 2 and it's going to go and it's disappear, and then batch 3 will come out and hopefully batch 4 and all that sort of thing. But
they always bring something new to the
table.
Yeah,
and they're always going to be different.
Isn't it? I think that innovation, that I understand what it means. Like, oh, I wish I had tried that whiskey from 15 years ago, the original 15. I really have all these conversations, but I think there's what we see today. I dare to say that it's probably better. I dare to say that in many cases can be even better because I think it's evolving with everyone's palates.
Yeah.
So I think it's bringing new propositions. Us right now, we have 3 different distillates, right? We have our classic Speyside, we have our peated, and we have been also, of course, once a year we also have our triple distilled. So we also triple distill, not a full year, not every single beer we triple distilled. Let me make this clear. But we have a full expression that are triple distilled. This is today. Who is to say that in 10 years we're not going to have a 4th style of distillation? Because we can, because it's, again, I have not heard anything. I'm not sharing any crazy secrets here. I just feel like what we have today, what we can drink today, it's probably better, number one, because we have it. Because we have it. You cannot taste what you don't have, what doesn't exist. It's just wishful thinking. And number 2, because it follows on the current palate. So I believe that it probably also works. I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, no, and I agree. And also, it doesn't come with any preconceptions. I mean, we've only got a couple of these single casks left, but I just grabbed a couple off the shelf. It's a peated Oloroso cask, but a 23-year-old peated Oloroso cask, and then a 24-year-old bourbon cask. There was Marsala, there was South African red wine, there was Tokay's.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I love that no one really knows what they're going to get when BenRiach single casks XYZ are announced. Could be anything. It could be anything in that.
And that's the one. And it's not many distillers that you feel this way. Yeah, we're now seeing that we're bringing all of the single casks. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Those 12 bottles could have been anything because we do have just about any barrels aging right now, like some dating back 1960s, 1970s. It's insane. It's insane to think that we still possess that type of stock, like that. It's very. You said it's there's something romantic about it. I think the way BenRiach approaches blending this whole cask maturation, it's very artistic. I think artistic is definitely the word for it. It's a painting. I always say. I always play this. It's like they compose, but with barrels. They paint. By using whiskey, and this is beautiful. Yeah,
I think that's very special. Leads into something I might ask right now, is because the question's come up a couple of times, but yeah, again, my sense of time and months and years is warped. In terms of like BenRiach single casks, is there another series after this one already?
No, it's not here yet. But
it's been announced and it's.
I cannot share much of that at this stage.
But so the UK hasn't announced it yet?
We have no announcements around it yet, so there's nothing not much that I can say at this stage.
But there will be another series, and whenever that is, in 2 months or in 20 months' time or 3 years.
I cannot ensure that we'll have it. Like I said, I think We have been. We heard a lot of different a lot of different things at this stage, and there's nothing that I can confirm.
Yeah, okay.
Especially it's gonna be recorded, right?
Yeah.
Not confirming anything.
Yeah.
Not confirming anything.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, from my completely uninformed view, my gut would be that, like in a normal year, being February, that yes, there would be another single, cask set announced. We would see them on current specs about 4 months, 5 months after they get announced and released in the UK, which would mean
The normal time would have been around
before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Which is when we
usually have like that. That's when
November.
BenRiach, and then right after
Yeah.
we have BenRiach. That's what usually happens. If it will happen this year, it's been
Yeah.
such a crazy year. Yeah.
And one of the big things that I think people aren't always seeing from an Australian point of view is a lot of distilleries either closed and furloughed a lot of their staff, or just sort of like went back to production. But all the whiskey's maturing, so that shouldn't affect anything. Yes, 100%. But one of the biggest hit things was the bottling lines. So I know
Exactly.
maybe not distilleries.
And distribution.
Yeah.
You cannot travel. Like imagine you, and we discussed this last time as well. Imagine how do you admin and go about travel retail right now. Who is traveling? And of course, this is also a big market to a lot of us. So that, of course, we're still, maybe production per se wasn't affected, not at least.
I mean, the barrels, you don't need to man a barrel if you're going to do its thing. But I know a lot of independent bottlers who don't own their own bottling lines, but will wait in line and just going, can it take months?
Yeah.
If you have your own bottling line, maybe that's a little bit different, but not many distilleries do. So
on top of the fact that if you think about social distancing, a lot of people couldn't, although they're out there as a distillery, they still couldn't be physically at the distillery doing the work. We also saw that happening in a lot of distilleries, but people also had to stop. And if you don't distill for a number of days, if you don't, all of that has an effect. So of course, still, it wasn't a nice walk on the park. For anybody, I don't think.
I think that question came up a couple of times there on the chat, and so the answer is we don't know, because no one really knows.
Now somebody knows. Somebody knows, but they're not. This person is not in the room right now.
But also that person who might know,
it might change. Also, the person that knows may.
I mean, look at again. Australia's done really, really well. We were working on some things with some bars in Melbourne to do some videos and stuff on the weekend, and then as of Saturday morning, when their restrictions got tightened up again, that became not possible, and so it's been pushed back. So even the people that do know, this is all very fluid. So I think that's the main takeaway from, as we don't need to explain this to anyone.
And it's good to remember that I know that right now, I think BenRiach and BenRiach and Glenglassaugh, those are our three Scotch brands. They have grown a lot in the past few years. But even though they grew a lot, they're still quite small compared to many other Scotch brands. Our volumes, if you just Google it, I'm not gonna be sharing volumes here, but they're still very small distilleries. What does that mean? That means that we're still quite flexible. The reason we can still be quite experimental, the reason we can still come up with these beautiful cask collections, the reason that it gives us the ability to bring in new things, but also pivot and change strategy. So of course that does mean nice. I have no whiskey left from this batch.
So I've got a little bit. I only have.
Seamus,
give me
send me samples.
Two things before I talk about this. I'm going to pull you up on something. Just on that. I love the word unprecedented, and I think it's being overused at the moment. So we changed that word officially to being daiquiri. So we're in these daiquiri times.
I like it.
And so we actually changed the word pivot at a tasting last week as well to martini. So you don't, as a business, we didn't pivot into virtual tastings. We martinied into live tastings.
Where was I that I missed that? I was in Blue Mountain.
I just wanted to pick you up on that one. So I've only got an absolute dribble left of this because I was waiting for you to come around or someone to come around. So do you want the South African wine cask
nice.
or the Marsala cask?
Marsala cask.
Okay, get the Marsala cask.
That's exactly what I was. Oh.
There you go. The very last of this, got none of that left. But yeah, so always good a chance for a bottle kill these sorts of events. Few comments coming through here. Paul Downey, who might have something to do with the oak barrel. And Paul, I think we might have nailed it, right? I quite like this space here. He says squeeze the bottle to try and get the last drops out of it, which I do agree. I gave it my biggest.
I made it. Marsala, right? So just look how many bears already, like just in quick chat today, already discussed today.
Just literally what I had laying around in the back of in Sydney, the warehouse.
Just something I had it here. I still have a little bit left from that GlenDronach cask collection left as well. That 13 are like I had some of that 13 yesterday. That PX 13. Damn, that whiskey is good. I think it was Chris that told me a few weeks ago that it's one of his favorites. That was a very decent whiskey.
Yeah. A couple of questions here, but on this comment you say, and Nico Devlin says Marsala cask, you say, yes, Nico, if you've got one, open it up now. But question from Phil Brooks, any Glenglassaugh single cask? Because, we love Glenglassaugh, and I reckon that's one of...
I actually have a bottle at home. I have a 9-year-old single cask, not in the same way that we bring BenRiach at this stage.
But like we've done GlenDronach and BenRiach almost once a year, twice a year when those singles. Yeah. Some of the most fun I reckon we've had with 44 people in that room in times before 2020. I reckon some of those tastings have been the most fun, and obviously we have May Lawrence come down and take photos at a lot of these events. I hope she's doing well at the moment, but I'll never forget, I think there's a photo of you out of all the photos opening like an 86 Glenglassaugh or something.
Yeah,
I've never seen you smile that much. That just...
It's not just a smile, it's just like... It is... Sorry, that's pretty much the expression. You never find that photo at this time.
I'm sure it's on here somewhere.
So we do have some single cask Glenglassaughs. Of course, they're a little bit different. We don't release in the same way we release BenRiach and GlenDronach. It's a distillery that was closed for close to 60 years. So as you can imagine, that means, well, we're producing whiskey, so we don't have as much stock to play with. Nowadays, we're a little bit better. We're doing a little bit better. It's getting better and better because, well, it's been now over a decade of us aging liquid. So
I thought you were talking about me then.
That makes things a lot better, but it gives us a little less flexibility, of course. But I do have this bottle that I actually filled at the distillery, which was those like single cask.
Oh yeah, the hand fills.
Yeah, hand fills, and I had to because Glenglassaugh is just it's just funky. Glenglassaugh is full of personality. I think about the brands that represent as if they were little people. Yeah. and Glenglassaugh would be like that little, I don't know, I would say a little bit that rebel, full of personality one that just does what it wants. Don't care if you like me or not. This is who I am, and you have to deal with it. Yeah. But in your mouth.
Yeah. I've always thought of it as that little bit of that ugly duckling that has so much power and I'm going to use the word hard again, but maybe
the ugly duck is a good one too.
Yeah, it's like this.
The little one forgot in the corner.
Yeah, it's the kid that grows up, too quickly and playing in the the preschool and the primary school. It's too rowdy. It's a little bit too strong. It's kicking all the other kids over at football. So it doesn't work in those blends. It just doesn't get along with things.
And it's so true, right? Because we tried.
It turns into a swan and wins a premiership with Sydney in later life because it just needed a little bit more time to develop.
I'm really gonna use that. I loved it. Because it's so true. Like that they punch all the other kids. So they try to get Glenglassaugh. No, I don't wanna. I am my own people, and I'm gonna do my own thing. And that's when it became a single malt.
Yeah.
No,
just by
not
accident.
Gonna put in any blends. Yeah. So if you don't know the story, we actually tried to. So Glenglassaugh originally was their intention was to produce and sell into blends, of course. As you know, great way of making money, but it just wouldn't work. Our new make's too funky. It's too loud. And I think when you said it's that kid that punched all the other kids, with all due respect, we're not here in any way preaching anything around punching kids. We're not in favor of that.
Bullying is bad.
Bullying is bad.
Unless it's on a football field.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
Please.
that's an oak barrel quote, not a Brown Foreman quote.
It's not a Brown Foreman quote. But yeah, I think Glenglassaugh definitely has that personality.
Yeah. Ali Ayres, who is a familiar face on our oak barrel streams, or has been last little week, from the Curry Distillery out of North Richmond, said it's all about the heart, which I know is something that they talk about in their gins as well. So I do agree, and it's one of my pet hates, not a pet hate, but just something that I sort of shake my head at with some distilleries marketing sometimes, is they say, we only take the heart cut because it's the best cut. We're only the purest. So it's like every other distillery on the planet. We all know you take a hard cut.
This is like a whiskey saying, and we age it in barrels.
Yeah, oak-aged whiskey, aged in oak barrels. Cool.
Really?
Literally by definition. But so I think, again, another reason why I like BenRiach and, the whole, stable of BenRiach distillers is, okay, tell me about the heart. Tell me what's different about it and what's, what makes your heart unique. There's other distilleries that triple distill or have hybrid stills that distill, and their heart is somewhere between like 86 and 90%, and then they manage that differently. Great, that's good in its own right. That's what I want to know about. I don't want to know that just I have a heart.
I think we have to be just a little bit forgiving because I remember myself when I started drinking, and I had no idea what was the difference between. Oh, I can't believe I'm telling this on camera. Anyway, I had no idea.
Hit record, everyone. This is going to be good.
I didn't know the difference between gin or vodka or whatever. And the first time somebody mentioned to me that whiskey was aged, and I saw the color, I didn't believe it. That's a serious story. I was like, it's not aged. I think it's just some coloring. Why would somebody put liquid in a barrel? It's too expensive. It makes no sense. I think it's all bullshit. It's all marketing bullshit. I remember this conversation as if it was yesterday. It was not yesterday. Please. But I just so imagine that person from like this time ago. It doesn't matter when I became 18, like 5 years ago. Right? So imagine that person. Imagine people with that mentality. They don't care about how it's made, where it comes from, what is a heart, what is not. You gotta make it easy, graspable. Like, all right, I can understand that is the middle. And that's better, and that's enough. Thank you. Give me a bottle. So I think we gotta. It's we have this big division. Like, right, we have to classify we have to segment our markets, and the majority of the market, it's not the person that knows what a heart is, what a cut is. The majority of the market is still the person that is like, okay, this sounds good. I'll buy a bottle.
Yeah,
it's hard to please both.
Yeah, and which is why I think there's a little bit of me that is annoyed by that concept of we only take the hard cut.
We have to keep educating the world.
Yeah, it's like, well, but everyone does. You're sort of jumping on that. But like, it's interesting you say that about why would you age in a barrel? That sounds expensive and stupid. But that was the case if we go back 300 years.
Imagine that.
Spirits were only put into barrels because they need someone to store them. Yeah. In America, it was get them from Kentucky down to New Orleans. Down the Mississippi, put them on a boat. What are you going to put them in?
In a barrel. Like, and why would it char? Because that same barrel carried some fish.
Yeah.
They need to clean that that stuff.
Yeah. So, but I think all these, like that journey that you may have had when you were 18 years old, it's a similar journey to what I had when I was going through gin and vodka and Jameson and Jack Daniels and like all those sort of bottles that I could afford back then. Admittedly, we're lucky enough to live in, this millennium and this century so that there's information out there you can, by tomorrow, that sort of stuff. But it's the same journey that everyone throughout history has taken. It just might have taken a lot longer back then.
I actually believed at some stage that vodka was made out of potatoes. That was just a thing.
Yeah, but
we all had a moment that I didn't know the difference between beer and wine. Get that? Like, how is that even possible? So... we all had that moment. It might be when you're 14, but you had that moment.
but like, why is there an assumed knowledge that everyone's going to know what we consider a basic beer and wine is different? At some point, whether it's at 3 years old or 30 years old or 90 years old, someone needs to tell you, or you need to go and actually read that in a book. If you've never experienced beer or wine before and you put two in front of you...
A family that doesn't drink.
Yeah, apart from just going, okay, they taste different, and one is a little bit stronger than the other ones, how would you ever know? So I think it's a good point, and I don't think in spirits, just in all walks of life, we should ever assume or,
that people have
Yeah.
to know something.
Yeah,
They do know something.
or even belittle someone for not knowing what we consider to be
Awesome,
obvious.
absolutely.
Like one of my pet hates is when, and I've seen it before, particularly at bigger events and stuff, where someone comes up and says, "Hey, have you got any of that Japanese Scotch or that? I love those Islay drams," and you don't need to say, "Mate, it's bloody Isla," or "They don't make Scotch in Japan."
No,
It's just like
absolutely not.
just educate and be like,
And
okay,
the thing
because
is,
that's like for me, that's my market tomorrow.
absolutely,
Like,
exactly. I was
like-
going to say, the more people drink, so if you're welcoming, the more people drinking responsibly, of course, enjoying good spirit, the better. So if somebody looks at me and I did have somebody once, I was still working in a whiskey bar, and this gentleman looks at me and says that he wants whiskey. I work in a whiskey bar, so I have like 500 plus brands behind me, and I said, "Alright, of course, we're a whiskey bar. I'm happy to serve a whiskey. What do you feel like?" So then he says, "I want a whiskey." I'm like, "Alright, you want bourbon, Japanese whiskey, Irish whiskey, Scotch whiskey?" And then he gets very angry at me and says, "Just give me," and then shouts a brand, which I'm not gonna say here. Shouts a brand, assuming that whiskey it's only and exclusively that one brand.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, of course, a very big brand, so it's understandable. And of course, I felt like being very rude back, like because you feel like it, right? But that person, if you take the time and not in a rude way, hey, but everything else here is whiskey, that person probably would have that one whiskey and leave and never come back.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard. Some people are just like uninformed. Some people are just very arrogant. But regardless, just taking a deep breath and investing that time, investing that 2 minutes to
That's
approach.
good. That's a good word.
Investing time, because that's what it is, right? Every relationship is about an investment of your energy, of your time, and bringing the bottle and maybe bring a couple of other bottles and make that person feel special and understand the difference. Next time will be easier for him, for the next person that serves him, and for the whole industry. Even when it's a little bit hard, I think sometimes you do it for the sake of the whole industry. It's worthwhile doing it.
Yeah. And I quite enjoy having the greatest job in the world, and I don't want to go back to Macca's, so I need customers. So for the sake of the industry, and for the sake of me as well,
to
like,
them.
next time you're about to yell at someone for not knowing, think about my poor face and how sad I'd feel.
Absolutely.
Quick couple of questions here, or a statement from Nico says, "We all start somewhere from not knowing about aging to an icon of whiskey. What a journey," which I'll agree with, yes, to an official icon, global icon of whiskey.
Thank you, Nico.
Nico almost did comment and say he still doesn't know about beer, and Mark Teagle, I'm going to put up there saying something best used to make whiskey, I think, and yes, that is the correct answer for beer. And of course, the most important comment of the night so far, Matt Bailey comes up with "Show us your pens." And I think you've seen this one before, and the pen tonight is the Otto Hutt. It's looking a bit more battered and bruised. It's had a few ink flow damages, and the cap is a little bit bent since you've last seen it, but it is a true warrior of fountain pens. So it's been doing very, very well in the past few months. And I get to, because everywhere you now need to either sign in or scan a code in, the Otto Hutt pen has been the one that I carry around with me everywhere in case the pub.
Why?
So that
I
if
don't know the story.
so because a lot of the pubs need you to sign in, and like TOs, they've got the pens and that sort of thing. Others, they're QR codes, so they can track everything.
So you're
carry my own pen, so just don't risk touching my hands on other pens.
You gotta bring that over to our next dinner.
Yeah,
Because I don't know if Matt Bailey saw that. We actually started another group chat. We're going out for dinner again, so please bring in suggestions.
Yes, because it ended so well last time. We can invite more than 10 people this time, probably. Actually,
Yeah, let's go 20.
let's
Why
get to
not?
yes.
It sounds.
I do like the idea of just like booking out a venue. Like that was fun and affordable when you could do it because 10 people was their
Let's
limit.
go for dinner in 30 maybe.
Yeah, because it gets more expensive the more capacity it is, so we need more friends to bring into the fold so that we can.
We need more friends. Oh, damn it.
Yeah. I knew there was a problem with all this. Friends, I need more friends.
We also just jumping back to BenRiach because I think
Yes, that's what we're talking about. BenRiach, love
deviated
it.
just a little bit, just for about 10 minutes. But I believe, I'm very, thank you very much actually for having me here today to talk about this brand. I always say that the brand that made me travel to Scotland for the first time was BenRiach. But on that same trip, I also made to BenRiach. Reason being, at this whiskey bar I was working at that time, they had a vast collection of BenRiach, a few different bottles, and it was actually still the same bottle. We still have not seen any changes. And they were all at the back. They remind me vermouth bottles at that stage.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and they have all of these labels and all of these cask finishings, and most of these bottles you probably won't be able to find anymore, because we're talking about different times. It was not with Brown Forman yet. It was still under Billy Walker direction, so different whiskeys. And that was very intriguing, because BenRiach had that beautiful rainbow, and BenRiach brought to us this very intriguing collections. And when I found out that the guys at the distillery call it the lab, and I actually, my wild imagination is like, oh, I made people working with lab coats and blending whiskey, so I really wanted to see it. It's sort of like one of the places that I really wanted to see it, and it definitely didn't disappoint, because as I said, we're not huge, so our distillery tours are still quite personable, right? They still, you don't necessarily have that massive visitor center, but you have people that, again, BenRiach, big heart. You have people with big heart that are definitely keen to talk to you, to show you around, and it goes beyond that classic distillery tour where like, this is a grist, this is a still, and barrels, just hands. No, it's more. They really go, like they really take the time to show you around and share a little bit more about their about the production, about their warehouse, their thing, and I definitely left the distillery very amazed. And I hope, again, if you have the chance to visit, please do it. Our doors are, I believe, open. I don't know if at this stage. Check the website. I cannot ensure that distillery tours are happening anywhere at the moment, really.
Yeah, so probably getting into the UK is probably the biggest problem at the moment, let alone
to start with.
Yeah, get into the country first,
Silly
then try and get to it.
Yeah. But in the future, when the time comes, when we're allowed to come and go, I guess, when I have a bit more freedom.
Yeah. So I might put you on the spot a little bit here, because I don't know the answer to this one. But in terms of what is available right now in the country,
I have a list.
Yeah, putting the single casks and back vintages and special things aside, obviously you've got the 10-year-old. There's the 16. There's also the 10 Curiosities.
You're not putting me on the spot. I think we have so many different
cask strength batch 2.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Yeah.
There's the 30-year-old and the 30-year-old peated, which is authentic.
The 30, the 25.
That's called something different, isn't it?
Yeah, we have the 25, the 30, the 35. We still have both 21s, peated and unpeated, temperate.
Actually, if you want to talk,
temperate.
Talk amongst yourself for a second.
But the thing is, we have a big inventory list to go through, because of course sometimes you have one bottle left from 2 years ago, one bottle from last year. So I think we're going to see some interesting BenRiach expressions being available at Oak Barrel at some stage, because you need to help us.
I'll be back in a second.
Well, so I'm going to be driving the show. Where's the pen? I need the pen. So if anything happens with me and Scott in the next 10 minutes, if we just go missing or something, the alarm just went off, please send the cops, because something has happened. All right, he's coming back. So I think just to answer his question, that's pretty much the expressions you mentioned before.
Yeah, so what are the core ones at the moment?
The core ones, we're talking about BenRiach 10, the one we just tried over here. Right, so we're talking about virgin oak, some ex-bourbon, and some sherry. We also have Curiosities 10, and this is our core. I don't know how much 12 you can find. We always run out of it quite quickly. This is our shades of sherry, quite beautiful as well, but should still be it should still be around. Sorry, was that good with the alarm?
Yeah,
that's your pen here. You have some 35. I actually finished. I had a sample. It feels like we're always drinking. We're not always drinking. We're just sampling whiskey, just trying. I had a little sample left, and I had it last week.
Should we?
I have. You know what? I'll have a little bit.
Yeah.
I will have a little bit.
As soon as I asked that question and you said the 30, 35, I forgot about that. I was like, I looked at that bottle about a week ago. It must be somewhere. Then I tripped to the alarm.
I'm very happy that I parked my car underneath the office, so it's sound and safe, and it's going to remain there.
Well, if you want, I can pour you one, and then you can just pour it into mine, and I can finish it from there.
I just want to... No, it's fine. My car is already sound. As I said, all safe. I just need a new...
Yeah, that's fine.
Just need a new glass. Can I just try for... not on camera.
That's right.
Well, anyway, I think when it comes to BenRiach, I think the key message that I really wanted to leave behind, because this is such a great opportunity, is number one, and if you can just remember that, I'll be already such a happy person. Oh, yes, it's of course our layering of flavors. All of these barrels, the way we go about distillation, fermentation, the way we go about barrel finishing, inside this beautiful spectrum that allows us to really layer these different flavors and deliver such beautiful whiskeys. I think that's the key message. Of course, if you have some space in your heart to remember something else, remember our beautiful lady blender, Rachel Berry. I always mention her because I really admire her work. And of course, our incredible progressive, intense Speyside, very different way of delivering Speyside whiskey, very experimental, very original, very artistic even.
Yeah. You might have seen me react to nosing this, because a few people online did. And I've got a question that just said, remind me what it smells like. So it was directed to me, I'm going to throw it to you. Remind everyone at home what it smells like.
I find this very intense note of plum, which is funny enough in the 35, and it's not something that you would actually think when you think about its barrels, the way it's aged, but I find it very plummy.
But it's like walking in, like, that's some sort of plum, like jam.
Yeah, it's like cooked.
But in the interior of like a...
Bring me some beautiful journalistic way of saying it.
Like an E-type Jaguar that it's been under covers for like 10 years. Oh. And so just all that elegance is soaked in, and just got that, not a new car smell, but like that old car smell that's very elegant.
It's very elegant, and
you're surrounded by plum trees or something.
It's a 35-year-old, and I would expect like a heat of tanning that it just doesn't happen, and that is phenomenal about this whiskey. It just doesn't happen. It's such a smooth 35-year-old, and you're expecting something incredibly full-bodied, but then it's just so well-rounded. But you still have that note. Come on, you can still tell that it's a very old whiskey. It's still there.
And it's that, for me, like old whiskey is always church pews, or like, those dried flowers like they used to do in heavy books. Like you'd get the biggest book you could find in your house and dry the flowers in them, and that sort of element to get that like papery smell with these very floral notes.
No, that it almost feels... Please don't judge what I'm gonna say, but it's not smoky, but it reminds you. It reminds you of a hint of smoke, a paper, a kind of a funky note. And
that's something like when people talk about like leather armchair in front of a fire whiskies, they always immediately it's always like smoke. But there's a few whiskies that you can go, this is exactly in front of a leather armchair. Sorry, sitting in a leather armchair in front of a fire. Sort of late night, or like this is an equivalent to port. Like,
and it sits. I find that when you nose it, this is specific whiskey. It feels to me like it sits. So you can feel it traveling, and it sits right here. Like exactly on that. Like here, right at the back of your throat. It comes through your nose and it sits right at the back of your throat. And I'm just talking about the nose of it. It's so intense that travels in, sits, and stays. So you can keep nosing the whiskey even after you're done, even after the act.
I totally forgot I had this. I'm pretty glad I remembered this actually, because this is very, very special.
Oh. Well, I think that's a very good way for us to finish the evening, because
it was meant to be
finish
just
as well.
Yeah, we're just going to have like a BenRiach 10, have a bit of a chat, nice and easy, like relax, all good, and we've ended up going through a couple of single casks and a 35-year-old. So thank you, everyone.
That's a Tuesday night.
Yeah, Tuesday night at the Oak Barrel Warehouse in this bubble where the rest of the world doesn't exist right now. And I think
I already canceled dinner reservation. I think we're just going to stay here.
Or order in. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Are we going to do Glenglassaugh at some point in the future?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Even next week,
Next
right?
week? Yeah,
I
let's
definitely
go.
feel like Glenglassaugh needs some love as well. We always just bring some hints of information, and I think it's worthwhile. And
Yeah.
I actually have a couple of good bottles at home.
Yes,
at the office that I'm happy to bring and share.
Because every time I open a revival here, it disappears. So I don't think there's any revival open or any Glenglassaugh open at the moment. So I'm wanting to go hunting around and find some. But yeah, we'll be back.
I have some.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to share a dram with an icon of whiskey, a global icon of whiskey.
Thank you, Scott. I love compliments because I definitely know what to do with them.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable around it.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. To everyone, thank you to Nico, to Phil, to Ali, to everyone there, to Whiskey is My Jam, everyone tuning in. We will see you at the next one.
For some Glenglassaugh.
Yeah, Glenglassaugh time next time. So this is the awkward bit when I pretend like I'm off, but it's not quite off, and they're still watching.
Just stay here.
But it could be. I mean, there's a
I'll
little
put some
prompt.
music on. I
Yeah,
have the globes already.